From 1946 to 1964, 76 million kids were born. 1 every 8 seconds, 10,000 a day, 4 million a year. By the way, it always looks to me that about half of those kids were conceived on that weekend right over there. By the way, keep in mind the baby boom followed a bust and then was followed by a bust. So it was this huge sort of mass migrating through life. Were we prepared? By the way, we weren't prepared. We didn't have enough pediatricians. We didn't have enough hospitals. There weren't enough diapers. There weren't enough bedrooms. There weren't enough pillowcases. In fact, if you go back to the 1940s, there's a fabulous lesson to learn about the future. And play along with me on this one. Imagine I came to you in the 1940s. And imagine I said, I'm a guy from the future. I can see the future. And I'm sure you wouldn't believe me. But had I been able to convince you, I might have said, and I know what's coming. There's a baby boom that's going to come, and every year there's going to be double-digit growth for the next 20 years. And you might have said, well, what should we do about that? And I might have said, well, let's go and buy some stock in that Gerber's company. And you would have said, I never heard of them. And I would have said, they're about to start putting baby formula in jars. And you would have said, oh, mothers make their own baby formula, not this generation. And then I would have wandered you over to New Brunswick, to that Johnson & Johnson company that had a very sexy little product they called a wound care strip. But they saw all these scuffed knees coming along, and they reintroduced it as a Band-Aid in 1951. And then I might have taken you to this cheap farmland outside the cities. And I would have told you that all these young families are going to be having so many kids. They're going to be outgrowing their row houses in Sheboygan, in San Diego, in Brooklyn. And they're going to need more land, more property to raise their families. And so they're going to buy up that cheap farmland and make an entirely new kind of life. They're going to call it a suburb. Property values in those zones are going to grow 500 to 1,000% in value. And then I might have introduced you to Ivan Combe in Long Island. He's a biochemist, and he has a son, Chris, about my age. And Chris had a terrible case of acne when he was a teenager. And Ivan whipped up this sort of creamy stuff that when he splattered it on Chris's face, made his pimples dry up. So he launched it in the 1960s. He called it Clearasil. Ivan made a lot of money. And then I might have taken you to the Midwest and introduced you to a 50-year-old down-on-his-luck kind of guy that sold Mixmasters, Ray Kroc. And every time old Mr. Kroc would sit in the diners eating, thinking about how he was going to get his attitude up to sell another Mixmaster blender, he noticed that all these teenage kids of this generation were in a hurry all the time. They like to eat fast, and their parents like to eat slower. So he came up with an idea that everybody thought was ridiculous, that he was going to create fast food restaurants for this generation. Licensed to McDonald's Brothers Hamburgers, the rest is history. And I can give you, by the way, 1,000 more examples. Had you invested in the emergence of that baby boom, you could have made $1 trillion. It's too late. But I can tell you with complete certainty that exact same baby boom is now rising up into an age wave. And so the question now becomes, what do 50-year-olds like to wear? What kind of cars are 55-year-olds going to want to drive? What kind of medicines will 60-year-olds need to take? What kind of housing or remodeling will retirees seek? Those are the boom markets of the future.